In November of 2023, the Swell Pod took a 10-day journey across 5 states, traveling 3,580 miles with one challenge in mind.
And that challenge was to interview 100 pleasantly rebellious humans to uncover deep truths about what it takes to create something that has never existed before, challenge the status quo, maybe even change the world.
This is the Kiln Road Trip, created and produced by the Swell Pod.
In partnership with Kiln, Moterra Camper Vans, and sponsored by Taurus.
I'm Spencer McKeown.
And I'm Josh Taylor, and together we're the co-hosts of the Swell Pod and your guides on the Kiln Road Trip. Follow along on the journey.
Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, follow the Swell Pod on social media, and subscribe to your YouTube channel at, you guessed it, the Swell Pod.
This is interview 48 of the Kiln Road Trip, and today we're at Kiln Boulder in Colorado talking with Yuval Laor. Yuval received his PhD in culture studies from Tel Aviv University, where he was supervised by leading evolutionary biologist Eva Jablonka. His dissertation explored the evolution of a religious psychology with an emphasis on evolutionary accounts of the human capacity for fervor and sudden conversion, and his subsequent highly original work was focused on the nature of fervor. Yuval has published articles in the journals of Religion, Brain and Behavior, and History and Theory. He is currently working on a book entitled Fervor: What Cults Can Teach Us About the Evolution of Religion. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy today's episode. Thank you, Yuval, for joining us on this crazy adventure that we're on, the Swell Podcast. We're on a journey to get 100 interviews with 100 different pleasantly rebellious people, and you are one of them. I'm wondering if we can just get started by introducing yourself to our audience and what it is that you do and what you're passionate about.
So my name is Yuval Laor, and I am writing a book.
Nice.
I'm turning my PhD dissertation into a book. I've been working on this for many years, and the book, the title is going to be, current title is Fervor: What Cults Teach Us About Religion and How to Navigate Awe.
That is so interesting.
Yes, so it is, and I wrote a PhD dissertation on the subject, so it is an analysis of religious psychology, as you most clearly see in cults, in sudden religious conversions, in the type of fervor that people can get into, and it's awe experiences, which are, and I can, of course,
that was my next question.
For hours and hours on each one of those.
Like, what is an awe experience?
So awe is an emotion. The way I use it, and of course, there's no agreement on what emotions are, even, if it's a coherent category, etc. But the way I use it is as a catch-all word for experience of mystery, wonder, effervescence. There's many ways to describe it, but I think it is related from an evolutionary perspective. All of my work is done from an evolutionary perspective, but a very specific type of evolution, not Richard Dawkins' evolution, not selfish gene, none of that bullshit, which happens to be. But so I think it is a relative, or it is evolutionary related to the emotion of love. And you most clearly see, in general, the psychology of love is most clear to see in parental attachment, when people fall in love with a baby, which can happen involuntarily. Of course, someone can put a baby on your doorstep and change your life drastically and quickly. And but that only happens when an awe experience passes a certain threshold. So in my book, I analyze the different types of love, which is parent to child, child to parent, teenager to parent, romantic love, and love of country, and they're all somewhat different. They all have, and there's also the falling in love event, event where you can change your life drastically,
Yeah.
where you get a lifelong commitment or long-lasting commitment, where you get blind spots, where you get the sensitivity to criticism, where you get rose-colored glasses about the baby that you just fell in love with. So, and I show how many of those elements are also seen in religious conversion. For example, if it's a fast conversion, it also gives you a long-lasting commitment, a sensitivity to criticism, blind spots, you know, rose-colored glasses. And so initially, if you have a very strong awe experience, regular awe experience make you strengthen your attachment to a faith or a belief identity, I call it. But if it's strong enough, it can cause a conversion where you change. Now you say, okay, so the same emotion can have two opposite effects. It can make you strengthen your faith or it can lead you to convert. But I think that if you look at the similar dynamics in love, if you look at romantic love, a strong falling in love event is how a family may start, but it also, by me, how a family ends when someone falls in love with a neighbor, you know? And so if you look at moderate or you know, less intense emotions of love, those strengthen a family. But if it's strong enough in the right circumstances with the right situation, it can actually lead, in the case of awe, to a religious conversion, in the case of love, to someone leaving their previous love and moving to someone else.
Oh, this is an interesting subject.
I already want to read like whatever you have. Like I'm very interested in this. But yeah, so from your own perspective, like, so what led you to this?
So I was a physics graduate student way back. And I dropped out of graduate school in physics. I also had an undergraduate degree in philosophy, so I had some background. But I took, and in the late 90s, I became, I don't know, obsessed, but I started reading a lot about Scientology specifically, but cults in general. And it's a fascinating,
Absolutely.
It's a really fascinating cult, and it's really, stuff was happening live, and the internet was really young, so I was seeing stuff on the internet. And then I took a class with, who is now my friend, but was my advisor for both a master's and a PhD. And this was a class on evolutionary theory. It was, the title was called Evolution in 4 Dimensions, which was the title of a book that my advisor wrote. And it's about, it's Eva-D, evolutionary developmental theory. So it's it's since the 90s, it's a revolution in how we think of evolution, which a lot of people aren't, aware of. But it is a very different way to think about evolution. And I talked to my advisor. I asked her about a book. And she told me I can write my seminar by essay about theories in the cognitive science of religion. So there's evolution theories that are based on evolution in a subject that exists from about 1990 called the cognitive science of religion. And when I read a few books in that field, I realized that it's completely inadequate in explaining anything about cults or extreme religiosity. And not just that, some people in the book, because those are psychology of religion people, and in psychology of religion, you're very interested in what's common and what's normal and regular religiosity. And they consciously ignore extreme versions of religiosity. But because I came to it from an evolutionary angle, and first of all, I was using a completely different evolutionary paradigm than they were, right? But also, I know that in evolutionary theory, the extreme cases are, you can't argue from an anecdote in evolution, right? You find one, famously, that's a rabbit from, 500 million years ago, and you'll rethink all of evolution. You don't need, if we find one talking cat, we don't need to say, well, what's the statistical significance? You can't argue from an anecdote. It's one talking cat.
Yeah.
We need to rethink the evolution of all cats and all language if we find one case. It doesn't matter that it's rare.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the fact that cults exist and that sudden religious conversion, even though it is quite rare and the sudden and quick, it can be very, very drastic. It can be quite striking. People change their life drastically. And so I knew that you cannot ignore the extreme. If you're going to talk about anything from an evolutionary perspective, you need to look for the extreme, unusual cases and say that any theory that explains the evolution of religious psychology would need to also be compatible with the existence of things like Scientology. So that was the beginning of my research, and I wrote a master's degree, I wrote a PhD, and now I've been working to turn it into a book for a while.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I don't know where to go because it's so many, kind of so deep and so yeah. What led, like, what from your childhood and your the way you were brought up, and like what elements of that has influenced where you've ended up?
So, I mean, I always was, I come from an atheist family. I grew up in Israel. And I'm a draft dodger. I'm a pro-Palestinian. And, it's very difficult what's happening right now.
Of course.
But I think that, first of all, I always had Orthodox Jews around me. And Orthodox Jews, they dress all the same. They say this exact same prayer at the same time. They wake up at the same time. They all wear their right shoe before their left shoe, but they tie their left shoe before their right shoe. So there was really weird kind of cultural uniformity around me, which I took as normal and took for granted, but it was always really striking and really enigmatic.
Right.
But I think that also I felt that I could have been one of those, or I could have been a cult member. I could have, that it was lucky that I'm not, or I mean, that it was. So I was always afraid, because today I know from the literature that there are some people that join cults easily and they leave easily, and there's some people that it's very hard for them to join, but then if they do join, it's very hard for them to leave. And I think that I would have been one of the latter.
Right.
So if I would have been in a cult, I would have probably stayed longer than I should, or everybody stays longer than they should. But I think that another aspect to this, or more fundamentally, is, I grew up being traumatized by Holocaust narratives. So as it happens to a lot of Israelis, but I've been watching Holocaust footage since age 6, because that's when the TV show and I've been sort of obsessed with it. And it's a kind of thing that happens to some people, but it's traumatizing and it's horrible. And I think that in the 90s, I sort of took that that habit of looking into the horrible, and just switched it from always the same type of stories in the Holocaust narrative to cults, which are also atrocious, horrible stories. And there's absolutely horrible cults out there. And so I think that might have been part of what allowed me to get the type of, education to understand cults in a way that would allow me to then write about them. And I've been going to the cultic studies conferences, so I know a lot of ex-cult members. And I think of them as the they're like people who are naturally really good at playing tennis, but they don't know why they're good at it. Well, I'm a guy that's writing a book about how to do it, but I never played it myself. You know?
Yeah.
So they have a different knowledge that I do, but they are the ones I look for to see if I'm onto something or not, because they are the real experts, even though they might not be as familiar with the literature as I am.
Can I just confirm something? I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So looking at cults and some of these extreme behaviors, I'm trying to understand. So the evolution of love into an awe and that experience, and how that ties into this extreme religious experience that makes it difficult for somebody to leave. Can you help me understand how you're really exploring that in reference specifically to cults?
So, well, first of all, cults, I think that looking at cults to understand religious psychology is like looking at abusive romantic relationships to understand romantic love. So it is the bad version. I mean, there's some people who say the definition of a cult is a religion you don't like, but well, I think that if you need to, first of all, look at the differences between the different types of love. So, for example, in romantic love, we have the psychological mode that we call limerence, which is something that happens. It lasts from a few weeks to a few years. It's what people refer to as being in love. And I think that we do have a similar psychological mode that I title fervor, which also lasts from about that time. And it's also very strongly related to uncertainty. So limerence, which is, as I said, infatuated romantic love, that turns into actual love when there's certainty. Either
I see.
When there's uncertainty, you remain in the limerence, and in the limerence, you have all this, intrusive thoughts, fantasies. You're not actually seeing the person as they really are. And so when people join cults, I think that first of all, immediately following a strong awe experience, which is something that many times happens, the awe experience can make you feel that something is really real. Not regular real, really real. Now, really real, it's strange, because the really real, it's much easier to ignore than the ordinary real, right? You can be a Christian and not turn your other cheek when someone hits you, or not give all your money to the poor. I know it sounds fun. How could that be? That's their core beliefs. But no, it can happen. So you can ignore what's really real. But with the strong awe experience, that which is, when you see something that is really real, you can ask, well, why is there, right? So let's say you see a miracle. A miracle is a classic way to experience awe, but there's many other ways to experience awe, and the causes of awe is a very, very complicated thing. But a miracle is a reliable thing. Now, what we see is that there is no connection between the miracle and the conclusion that people draw from the miracle, right? So seeing someone walking on the water, that could be proof that Christianity is correct, that Islam is correct, that aliens have landed, that ghosts exist, which is in the Bible what they initially think. The people on the boat, when they see Jesus walking on the water, it could be a proof that we're living in the Matrix. It can be proof that, and for each one of those, that would feel, I saw the miracle, now that was a proof, and so I don't know if I'm still.
It's definitely been helpful. I think it helped me make some connections that I think I was missing.
So I think that, for example, when someone joins a cult, I mean, we all have like this default of what we will conclude if we see a miracle, right? So let's say we see a miracle now. Here, you might turn into a devout Muslim. You might see that Buddhism was correct the whole time. I might, or I might remain skeptical, saying, who's trying to deceive us? Or did I take LSD or whatever? So you need to ask, what is it that determines? And so each one of us has a pre-existing what conclusion we'll come to if we see a miracle. Now, to make you change your faith, that's not easy. To make you change what conclusion you'll draw when you see a miracle or when you have a strong awe experience for one reason or another, that's a lot easier. So it could be that you're in your everyday life, if you see a miracle, Catholicism was proved to you just because of how you grew up. But now you came to an ashram in India for this context, for the days that you're going to be there. Now, because of the social, if you're alone, if you have a strong awe experience in this context, then if they believe that their guru is God, that might be what you conclude has been proven by the awe experience.
Yeah.
So with cults, they first immerse you in this, you don't need to believe, but then they induce strong awe experience, for example, through prolonged meditation, which would induce hallucinations, which can be interpreted in a way that induces an awe experience and then can be used to prove something that is unrelated to the awe experience. And so right after that experience, I think that you might have a few hours or a few days or even a week or two of the symptoms of hypomania. So this is not hypomania, because that's only in bipolar people, but this is not needing much sleep, talking all the time, being very optimistic, very excited. That turns after a few days, usually, to the psychology of fervor, which is a state that you can be in for a few years even. And then it usually settles down into sober kind of attachment to the belief. So cults, many times people join a cult. While they're in the psychology of fervor, they do not need, the cult doesn't need to isolate you and engulf you.
Yeah.
Because the psychology of fervor does that for them. But after 3, 4, 2 or even less, or maybe 5 years, the fervor goes away. And then the people who are not isolated and engulfed usually do find a way to get out of the cult. They find a relative that they didn't burn a bridge with, because the cults will try to burn all your bridges so that you will not leave. Right. But if the cults do manage to isolate and engulf you, by the time your fervor goes away, then people can be stuck in a cult for a
long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is a huge topic.
This is a long form interview.
Oh, I think we need
we probably need a couple of hours. I know that we've got someone waiting, but how do you want to wrap it up?
Before we get into the rest of the episode, we want to thank the partners and sponsors who made the Kiln Road Trip possible. The Kiln Road Trip is brought to you by Kiln. Kiln is a boutique co-working and flex office community with 13 locations in 6 states across the West, dedicated to providing innovative workspaces that empower your team to thrive. Whether you're a solo visionary or an enterprise-level team of up to 100, Kiln transcends being merely a place to work. It's a hub for learning and connecting with like-minded professionals that will make you and your team love where you work.
And if you haven't stepped foot inside a kiln yet, you really need to. On this road trip, we visited every single location, and trust us when we say once you see these beautifully designed spaces, meet the talented team, and connect with fellow members, you won't want to work anywhere else.
Locations include Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Oregon, California, and Arizona. And they're growing too, with multiple locations set to open in 2024.
Yeah, so be sure to check out the kiln locations nearest you by booking a tour at kiln.com and answer Swell in the question, how did you hear about us? Once you complete the tour, you'll be entered into a competition where you could win a 1-year membership, their club membership at Kiln.
Yep, you heard that. That's kiln.com, book a tour, and be sure to mention Swell in the question, how did you hear about us?
The Kiln Road Trip is also brought to you by Motera Campervans, a luxury campervan rental company for iconic road trips. Their top-of-the-line vans are available at 7 locations located near America's best outdoor adventure destinations. They have consistently earned the highest customer ratings in the industry, making Motera campervans your gateway to adventure without sacrificing on comfort or service.
That's true, and initially we wanted to take this journey in a 1960s VW bus, but thankfully we found Motera instead. With 3 van options, we took the Pop Top Classic, which sleeps 4 and is best for those who want to maximize floor space and storage. This was critical for us because it needed to sleep the entire crew, we needed space to edit, and we were traveling with large amounts of equipment, luggage, and other goodies that we picked up along the way.
And this van took us through all 3,580 miles of the trip. Super comfortable and sweet to drive.
And actually, Motera offers fully planned itineraries if you'd rather leave the planning to someone else.
Visit gomotera.com/swell. That's gomotera.com/swell.
This episode is also brought to you by Taurus. Taurus is leading the charge in home energy storage. Taurus makes it easy to achieve energy independence and a greener tomorrow. The Taurus station provides everything you need to generate clean power, efficiently store electricity, and easily manage your energy use.
And installing a Taurus station offers plenty of benefits, including save money on your electricity bill,
also ensure energy security with backup power during outages,
reduce carbon emissions with renewables.
You can also automate EV charging and HVAC systems with 100% renewables.
And enjoy unrivaled system monitoring and support.
If you like the sound of those benefits, get a quote to build your Taurus station in less than 30 seconds. Super easy at taurus.co. That's TORUS.co. Now, let's get back to the episode. Well, so just, so we have just a couple quick fire questions for you, and then I'd like to just know, when will the book come out or anything like that. But so as it relates to Kiln, what's been Kiln's role as it relates to you writing your book?
So the Kiln has been, my second place, right? Your home, work, and then the third place. But the second place, work, is working from home is hard, and I'm distracted at home. Coffee shops don't work for me because I'm distracted by music. I'm not distracted by people talking. And so the Kiln opened up a couple of blocks from my house, and because I live right there. And it is an option instead of having to go to the library where there's no parking at the university. I can come here, and it's a place where I'm conditioned that if I come here, I work on my book. And one of the benefits is that when you pay money,
it makes you want to do the work.
Not want to, but it makes you
actually
you have to. Otherwise, you just spend the money. So the fact that it costs money and that I'm paying it commits me to working on my book. So
it's a good strategy.
Yes,
that's good.
And when does the book come out?
I think I'm going to have a draft ready by maybe January, and then I need to find a literary agent or a publisher, or there's different options. But and I'll see how far a draft is from the book. It's my first book, so
that's great.
Well, we wish you the best of luck. There's one last question if you want to ask it real quick.
Any advice for those that are trying to create something that never existed before? Of course, you are trying to create a book and a series of insights and thoughts, right, from your PhD. Any advice for those people that are out there from your experience?
I don't know. I think that luck played a huge role in the path that led me to write this book. So it's hard for me to know what I did right and what was just lucky to meet the advisor I met, to happen to have read the books I've read. But there's, I guess my advice is there's a lot of stuff to write about that people assume is, there's many subjects that people assume, there's no other PhD anybody can write on Plato, but there still is. And so there's a lot of subjects that seem like settled matter, like we know what different things about, health, biology are, but it turns out that academic life is still very, very dynamic.
So be curious, challenge everything, really, what you're saying, and maybe look out for the things that have connectivity, things that have happened in your life that are maybe luck or reflect on who you've met and maybe where you might go next.
This has been fantastic.
Thanks for being one of the 100.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Kiln Road Trip. Be sure to follow along on the rest of the journey, and you can do that in 2 ways. 1, subscribe to the podcast, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or maybe even watching on YouTube, and follow along on all of our social media platforms, whether you're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or TikTok, @the Swell Pod. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.